Hello and welcome to Back to Health. My name is Dr. Philip Corbin, and today we are going to talk a little bit from my heart to your ears. In starting this show, we've been covering a lot of varied topics, and we are looking at how our bodies affect the health and our ability to live our lives. And the title of the show being Back to Health, I believe it is important for us to set the context of why we would say that our back actually leads to our ability to be healthy and or not healthy, and to kind of talk to you a little bit as if you were one of my patients in the office, and to give people a clearer understanding as to where we're coming from in talking about rehabilitative care and exercising and that type of thing. So today what I would like to talk to you about is a little bit about where health comes from, where to get it when you need it, how you not to maybe undo things that are done to you, and then how to get the most out of care when you are actually participating in care. And that's exactly what I intend to do, is take a little bit of time and share that with you. Additionally, I hope to be able to show you how trauma plus spinal neglect can lead to poor health. The 5 worst words that come into the office are, "I thought it would go away." You know, folks, common sense and reality just say that the only way to get something to get better is it's not going to get better until what's causing that problem is actually gone. So it's not going to get better if you just ignore it. It might go away for a while, but eventually you're going to have to deal with that underlying cause. So, I just mentioned trauma and spinal neglect, and I ask all the time, how does this spinal misalignment happen? What do we do to ourselves that makes this happen? And, we could spend an entire show talking about the thousands of ways that you can have spinal misalignment, but let's just kind of talk about a few things. Go back to, many times it happens in childhood. When I was in school and you were trying to impress that girl that sat in front of you in class, it was real funny to take that chair and yank it right out from under them, and they hit, bam, right down, tailbone onto the floor. Well, all that force and shock goes up through the spine and hits into the disc and the nerves and the ligaments and everything in that body. And so, misalignment can occur. I didn't say that pain had to happen or anything like that. So this can go on, and then later on in life we may have to deal with that. Or boys in football would be another classic example. I love the game. I've played the game many years, but just imagine the forces that go on when two people come together. The spine and the body is designed to handle a lot of forces, but I can guarantee you it was not designed. The neck was not designed to take a helmet upside of it. And so, this is some of the ways or accidents. Okay, we'll talk about. It's not just that 50-mile-an-hour tail-end collision. Or it can even be in these little fender benders. Okay, they've proven that soft tissue injuries can occur in these very, very 5-mile-an-hour or less accidents. Cars are designed so safely now that they have crumple zones. Well, what happens when the impact is so small that it doesn't crumple the zones, where it's designed to crumple? Where does all that force get distributed? If you're sitting in a car and you have the little fender bender and the crumple zones don't crumple, where does that force go? Typically it translates to the highest point in the car. The highest point in the car, besides the roof of the car, is where? About your head. What happens to a whip? When you take a whip and you flick it on one end, where does all the force go? It goes out to that end. So you can just imagine, even at a small impact, 5-mile-per-hour force, what kind of forces that the neck is absorbing. In the emergency room, they have a thing called lipstick sign for the ladies that are wearing lipsticks that come in after being in a motor vehicle accident. And what it is you'll have a mark on the front of a light-colored blouse down about the chest, and they'll be like, how did that get there? Well, if you can take your head Now, I can't bend my head down that far, but you can just imagine how much force has to happen for it to come all the way over and actually be able to leave a mark on the blouse. And, you know, a lot of times we'll be talking about accidents, and what's the most common thing we hear, and it's that, you know, I was in an accident a few years ago, and I didn't notice anything wrong. Maybe it was sore for a couple of days, and nothing really, you know, I was better after that. Well, a few years goes by, and now there's numbness down the arms, or headaches are a lot more frequent, and you know, mom's TLC made you feel okay after the wreck, but what was actually injured during that accident was never actually dealt with, and so now the body is dealing with it on its own through diminished ability to manage itself in day-to-day activities. Okay, so let's give you a little bit of trivia maybe that you could use to impress your friends, okay? And maybe said a little bit about where we go from here, and that is, what is the most important organ in the body? Okay, so first things you could think of would be like the heart, and obviously the heart is very important. If it wasn't there, we wouldn't be able to supply blood and oxygen to the body. The lungs, they're very important to the body, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be able to process air out of the atmosphere and give our body the oxygen that it requires to live. But what is the only organ that's completely encased in bone? Well, that's this thing right here, okay, and that's the brain. And I believe God knew what he was doing when he designed this, and that is, we want the most important thing to have the most protection around it, so it's completely encased in bone. The second most important thing in our body then would be the spinal cord, or what exits this thing. And if you think of the anatomy, you have all these bones in the back that the spinal cord goes down through, and it protects that spinal cord a whole lot. Now somebody might say, well, if it's so important, why isn't it all just one big solid thing? Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't be able to move. So we're designed so that each one of those individual segments is able to move independently and allow us to have these nerves feed out from that spinal cord into our body to be able to move our fingers and our toes and our head, and to be able to sense the world around us as well. So not only is it mechanically giving our information of the musculature, but our five senses of smell, taste, hear, touch, vibration, all these things come in through that nervous system. So it's very important. So if we go back to the development of us as an individual, our mom and dads came together, two cells become one. This two cells then do their magical replication act of life, and one becomes two, and two becomes four, and four becomes eight, and eight becomes 16, and 32, and 64, and so on and so on and so on. Well, one of the very first things that's differentiated out of those stem cells that are in there is you get a black streak along through there, which is what is termed the primitive streak. And then a little more development goes on, and it becomes what's called the notochord. And that soon develops into what becomes the spinal cord and the brain. So as we are developing, that the brain and the spinal cord are the first two things to come into existence. That's before there's an eye or a heart or a big toe or anything else in our body, because